Roll call.
Fisher.
Here.
Essig. Here. Knopfinger.
Here.
McNutt.
Here.
Ward. Seaman. Butler.
Here. Okay.
We have someone to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, my name is Palmer Liston. I'm a junior.
And I'm Baylor Clark. I'm a senior.
So we're representatives from Student Council. I'm a Student Council officer. So right now, we're in our busiest time of the year with homecoming. That's huge for Student Council. So just some highlights, things that we're working on. The theme itself is called Panthers Assemble, which is kind of a takeoff of Avengers. But the theme in general for the dance or float building for the parade is just movie premiere. So it's a little bit more broad if you want it to be, but the actual title is Panthers Assemble. And yeah, there's all sorts of stuff we're planning. Community night is big. The parade that Friday is really big, and then just the dance in general. Every meeting we've been breaking off into our committees, like decorations. There's a backdrop committee. Or what else is there? There's all sorts of things that we're just planning.
And then for fundraiser rise, we've been talking about different fundraisers we're able to do. We have one right now at Ice Cream Shack on the day of homecoming that part of the proceeds go to support brain cancer research. And then we're also looking to do similar fundraisers and even more than last year to also support brain cancer research. Thank you.
All right. Sounds like you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, number 4, public hearing and overview of FY 2020 budget.
Okay, let's do this here first. Okay, so I'll load up the PowerPoint presentation if I can get it to you. So we have to have a hearing, and then, so here's some of the background. On June 10th, the board approved a tentative budget. And so the Finance Committee met on August 16th to review the tentative budget and the adjustments made since that June 10th. And there were quite a few adjustments made with things like our evidence-based funding coming in right about the time that we had our funding coming in. And so I've got a presentation I'll put together. After I'm done with the presentation, Mrs. Essig will ask if there's any comments, any public comment will need to be made. And then after that, we're going to ask the board to adopt the resolution on the second page, and I'll leave that right there so it's up and present. This isn't the approval of the budget. This is just the budget hearing, the budget presentation. The adoption of the budget will take place later in the board meeting. So it should only take me a few moments to go through this. But here we go. All right. Here's our budget presentation. Here's a quick overview of what we'll be discussing tonight. We're going to hit 4 of the major funds. Then I'll do a comparison to the previous year's budget, and then we'll finish up with questions to the board. Here's our yearly schedule. And I like to emphasize this. The budget planning goes back several months. And then it also leads up after this. You'll see in December, lower right-hand corner, that's when the board will approve the next year's tax levy. And so it is a yearly calendar cycle, and this is what we follow. All right, so let's get into the 4 different funds. Here's a brief overview of the education fund in this year's budget. Local revenue was up quite a bit. The evidence-based funding was up $115,000, which is awesome. And federal revenue is up $39,000. Federal revenue is, a lot of it's tied to our Title I, Title II services, and IDEA. If the IDEA revenue comes up, it's because we're having more and more students in special populations that require those services. Okay, so here are the adjustments from the time that we did our tentative budget. We've hired additional staff, and that is counselor science. The part-time dean was increased in the number of days, and then the RTI, that was the increase in the number of days that was added to for this next year. So when your staff grows, as we know, that is a major contributor to our budget, is our personnel costs. So all the title grants, IDA, the CTEI grants were all finalized. We've done a lot of scrubbing of different lines, and that continued all the way up until really the last week before we met with the Finance Committee. Fund transfers. There was a change that I brought to the Finance Committee, and I'll get to that a little bit more, but it's from the transportation fund. And so this is going to be a transfer of $300,000 from transportation to the education fund. But I've got a talking point on a future slide. We have contingency designation of $250,000. And then this year, because we had a local grant that came in, we have to declare that as revenue. And then E-rate line items. And so that was something new. There's a $15,000 revenue line for E-rate, that's our category 1 services, that's our internet service provider, that we get a discount for that. So we have to capture the revenue in that fund. Here's some adjustments made in insurance. As the board knows, we made the transition to consociate effective May 1st. And then on August 31st, we maintained a fund balance of $1 million, right about that. The premium rates did go up slightly, wasn't much over last year's, but it was in line with what the premiums were the prior 2 years to last year. And so the insurance is still holding its own. So let's talk about the operation and maintenance fund. You'll see, since this is such a smaller fund, I can capture all the information on one slide here. Revenue, with the work of Ms. Davis and her tech team, we applied for E-rate Category 2 services. That is what we called our switch refresh throughout the building. So we applied for E-rate discount and received it. We will realize after we've paid the bill, we'll get about $80,000 reimbursement for that work. So it's basically 50% of the cost. And so we have to declare that as revenue, so it's going to hit the O&M fund because that's where we paid that out of. Of course, on the expenditures, we had $58,000 set aside this year for our health, life, safety survey. Pleased to report that we have $200,000 in contingency, $377,000 in designated funds for future projects, and then we also budgeted about $250,000 for the security and technology upgrades. The technology upgrades, keep in mind, that's about the $160,000 of which we're getting $80,000 in revenue. So revenue is up $280,000 over last year, and designated fund balance transfer. There will be a fund transfer of $1.5 million from O&M to capital projects. That's money that has been set aside for the new addition and the work on at the stadium. And so we're going to have to do that to the capital projects to pay off all the work with that. So transportation fund, our revenue is up $7,600 over last year. The bottom part on the left there, the $300,000 fund transfer. At the end of this fiscal year, if we didn't transfer that $300,000, we'd be sitting right at about $1 million of fund balance. That is more than 1 year, of existing funds. We've done a really good job managing the transportation fund, covering all the costs and expenses with it. So with that, if we transfer $300,000, it'll bring our fund balance, our projected fund balance, to about what our expenses are for a year. I think that's being fiscally responsible in that, and so we're allowed to transfer that money, so that's what was brought forward to the Finance Committee. And the additional $300,000 going to the Education Fund will help offset the indifference between our revenues, projected revenues and expenditures. The other thing that I want to point out, the Transportation Director salary. In previous years, Mr. Knobloch, our athletic director, got paid 2/3 of his salary as AD. And 1/3 of his salary was paid as a transportation director out of the transportation fund. When we had our TRS audit about a year plus ago, one of the things that we discovered is that if you're paying for an educator's salary out of the transportation fund, that is, you can't code that as a TRS benefit. It has to be an IMRF benefit. Okay. So with that, Mr. Knobloch, that would really be a disservice to him to transfer 1/3 of his costs and benefit from TRS into IMRF. And so we had to correct that. And so his salary is being 100% paid where it should be paid as the athletic director. So what we've had is Mr. Nelson, who has been retired. He's been serving as part-time transportation. He's actually the head bus driver. So we really didn't have a transportation director. Matt Reiser has been doing some of that work, and so half of his pay is going to be coming out of the transportation director, out of the transportation fund. He is well aware of that. He is perfectly fine with half of his pay going into the IMRF system. And then upon Kurt's retirement, after retirement, which we believe will be in about a year and a half, he'll finish out this year and possibly next year. Then we're looking at Matt being able to take over that job full-time as the transportation director, and then he'd be a full-time IMRF employee. So all that being said, we still have $50,000 in contingency. That is just the difference between how much revenue is going in there and what our projected expenses are. We typically spend less than what we project in the transportation fund. That's how that fund balance has continued to grow to about $1 million. Okay, so then the working cash fund. We levied additional dollars for the working cash. This is just natural. On the right-hand side, I wanted to point out these are the transfers or the abatements out of the working cash fund. Since 2012, we've done a lot of projects. And so as money's gone into the working cash fund, as we've done these projects, we've had to spend out of the, or transfer, abate out of the working cash fund. And so this is our attempt to bring the working cash back to a nice balance. Because this year we're going to take $1,080,000 out of the working cash and move it to capital projects. If you see the asterisk there for FY19, the budget had $2.5 million being abated out of working cash, but in June we abated an additional $1 million because the project costs, we had more costs last year than what was anticipated. So that is all money that has been accounted for with the bond proceeds for those projects. Okay. There's an item in our budget. It does not have any other purpose other than to try to capture what our on-behalf payments are for retirement. And this is a number that is set by the auditor. And so I used FY19's audit number. Mr. Cook will be adjusting that number. You'll see that in this year's audit report. But basically it's money that should come in from the state and go back to the state. So it's an in and an out. We actually never see these dollars, but it's an on-behalf payment that is listed in our budget. So that's, we put that in there. All right, so let's do a comparison, and here we go. So the first slide here is the operating funds, and I just recognized I forgot to change the dates at the top. That should be FY19 to FY20 at the very top of the screen. And so I'll get that corrected before we post that on our website, this presentation. But you can see where our beginning balances were, what our revenue to expenditures are. And so we're really close in 1920. We're projecting about $15.5 million and about $15,900,000 in expenses. You got to keep in mind there's a $250,000 contingency number listed in that expenditure, so it's really less than the difference in the percentage. The building fund, you can see where our beginning balance is. We're almost at $6 million this year, but after we make that transfer, hopefully at the end of this next fiscal year, we'll be sitting at $4.6 million. So we're spending some of the project money that we've designated, and that's why we did it. Okay. Transportation fund, you can see starting off this fiscal year, we'd be at $1 million. We needed, our expenditures. It says $1 million there because that has a $300,000 transfer, but we should be right around $700,000, which is what our ending fund balance should be. And then you can see our working cash fund with the new revenue coming in this year, and after we have the expenditures, we hope to close out this fiscal year with just about 2/3 of $1 million in working cash. Okay. All right, so here's the summary. Let's see if these numbers make sense. So we have a total of $23 million of revenues in this budget, total of $27 million in expenditures. So we have $3.7 million difference, and that's a big red number. However, $3.2 million of that is wrapped up in expenses for the capital projects. Okay? We also have $500,000 in contingency and $377,000 in designated funds. So if you take the capital projects line and the contingency line, because we hope that we don't spend out of the contingency. We haven't spent out of the contingency in a number of years. You add those two numbers together and throw that back on top of the difference, and we basically have a balanced budget. And that's what I wanted to bring to the board. We have a balanced budget with $377,000 set aside for future projects. Okay, so that money is going to be set aside. The only thing that would give us an unbalanced budget is if we had to dip into our contingencies. So, last question on the slide is, what questions does the board have?
Early on your title line, there were 4 letters that I'm not familiar with what that was. I know that the Title I.
Oh, Title I? IDEA? CTEI?
No, I know the IDEA, CTEI.
Careers in Technical Education Instruction.
Okay.
That is all of our business, FCS, Family and Consumer Science, transportation. What am I missing?
Trap, welding.
Yep. Yep. That is all those classes.
I just wasn't familiar
Yep.
with those letters.
And we receive money for that help offset 2 of our teachers' salaries. They account for about 40% of one teacher's salary and about 30% of another teacher's salary. And so it's federal money that we receive for that. What else?
Can you go to the operating funds comparison, one of those? Doesn't matter which one.
Oh. The comparison over last year to this year?
With the yellow, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I had a question, like education ends at 3.194 million, and then a beginning balance for the next year is 2.9. If it ends at one number, wouldn't it begin at the same number?
You win the prize.
Yeah, I'm like,
So, this is good. Very, very good question. This is what I presented to the board last year. So, that number, all of these numbers were right here. So I literally just take that number and slide it on over. But this is this year's budget. It is an actual hard number. This was last year's estimated number, And so it tells us that we spent
Oh,
a
so-
little bit more than
Okay, so
what
that's
we
after
had.
the audit.
Yes. So this is an actual budget number, just like this was last year's actual budget number, so I compare them. I do that for a reason. It's comparing the exact number. This is what Mr. Cook, our auditor, said our fund balance was. We got a verification from that, yes, that indeed was our ending year fund balance. If you remember when I closed out last, I think I talked about it in July, where we're at, we had significant expenditures out of a couple of different areas in the education fund. Our out of district tuition was a significant increase, and that really was the difference. There were some things that were just literally outside of our control. And that was the difference about where we were at. And you can see, I mean, out of 14 million, $15 million budget, we were really close. Had that not gone that way, and then we don't get reimbursement from that, it's always reimbursements in arrears. So we hope that we get on the positive side of the bubble. We reduce the out-of-district tuition. That's the best thing, because then your costs go down, but your reimbursement goes up, and we can capture some additional revenue and hopefully get on the right side of that curve. That was a great question.
That's kind of a crapshoot though, isn't it?
It is. We've done a great job with the insurance committee trying to minimize the risk on expenses, overshooting your expenses. So we've really done a great job minimizing that. And the insurance is a large number out of that education fund budget. Places, we can control supplies. We can control personnel costs to certain extremes. What we can't control is that if people are out of work and we have to get long-term subs, then we're really paying for two people to do that one person's job, because in the case last year, we had people on long-term leave of absence. They're still utilizing their benefits, so they're being paid using their sick days, and then we're paying someone to do that job on top of that. So we assume a little bit of risk with salaries.
Well, I was thinking about special ed too. I mean, out of district tuition, especially boarding.
And Gloria, that is exactly what we cannot control.
Right, that's what I mean about the crapshoot.
It
It's
is.
out of our control.
Someone move on in and they are an out-of-district tuition student.
And they
We have
come.
to- yeah,
I mean,
we
they
have to
come and they
absorb
don't
that.
come.
And what the board needs to realize is students that are 15 years old still at the elementary, they become our property. And so we can have students from 15 to the day they turn 22. That is a large span. And so, but that's the risk that we absorb with that. So, good question. Anything else? All right, Ms. Sessom, then that's on over to you to see if anyone wants to make comments.
Comments from the audience?
Mrs. Uffring, no comments?
No comment.
All right.
I would like to know how many school districts in the Perry area can boast explaining what looks like a deficit, but we have a balanced budget. I mean, that to me, in this day and age, is pretty something to be proud of.
Yeah, it is. We took in that money 2 fiscal years ago, so we were revenue heavy at the closeout of that fiscal year 18. This fiscal year, we're going to be revenue short, but
We've also changed investments. We've gone for grants. We've done a lot of other things to boost that too.
Right.
Maybe they haven't been earth-shaking, but they've been contributory.
well, we've got about $100,000 in just the E-rate money. It's a lot of work. Holly and her team did a tremendous job. I mean, it is a lot of work, and you have to bid it out, but it's saving the taxpayers $80,000.
But I think that's something that we really as a board need to recognize is how our administration and perhaps faculty, I'm not even aware of, are always looking at ways to save money and yet still have a good product.
Absolutely.
All
You're up.
right. No questions, and on to visitors and correspondence.
Oh, we've got I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought we did that later.
You have to adopt the resolution. And so that calls for a vote.
Does this come from the finance committee?
Well, this
or
is just,
not?
this is just a resolution, so,
So is that something?
so yeah, you have to take formal action on it. And then there's a roll call vote. And then that just says, hey, the hearing has been concluded.
I assume that's read.
All right, I got it now. Are you ready for the resolution? Okay. Whereas a public hearing on the 2019-2020 budget for District 308 was advertised as required, and whereas the tentative budget was available for public inspection at the school from August 9th through September 9th, 2019, and whereas the public was given the opportunity to speak in public session regarding the tentative budget, now therefore be it resolved that District 308 has compiled with the requirement of the School Code of Illinois prior to the adoption of the school district 2019-2020 budget.
I move that we as the board pass this resolution, adopt and pass this resolution. Is there a formal response to that? We need
Days
to do
and
that.
days,
It's
so-
simple.
You just got to do a roll call.
Okay, Butler,
Yes.
McNabb,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to get.
Now, motion passes. Yep, okay, so on the visitors and correspondence, which I think we don't have any still. Okay. Reports.
Okay, so here's your, we have to report these to the board, and then they get posted on our website. This is our teacher and educator, administrator, and teacher salary and benefits report. The IMRF report, which is required to be posted on our website. And then our investment and insurance report. So here's where we're at with our total investments. We're sitting at $6.5 million. This number here, sometime in the next coming months, is going to drop to 0. This is our bond proceeds number. So insurance, I was able to get everything. We did not have an insurance committee meeting because the day that we were supposed to have it, I was able to get the reports from Consociate. So I went ahead and updated this. And what you'll see over here on the right, this is the July bills for medical claims. And in August, you'll see that they're rather large. As we take a look at it, you'll see the difference between this year and last year's medical claims. Some of these things have been run out. But when we look at it overall as a comparison, we have received, this is our reimbursement this year. I'm sorry, $680,000 we've received in stop loss reimbursement. And so when you look at our total cost, it's not much different than where it was last year. Okay? So that is a breakout. When you look at our total cost, yes, our total cost has been there, but this is money that's been sent back to WCHS, our health trust. And so when this number is a big positive number, that means that we've had a lot of claims. Okay, those are to be expected. We do forecast those going down. We hope that nothing new pops up, and that we can level out the rest of this year with that. So that is your investment and insurance report, and then the other two items that we have to post.
All right. The dean's report.
You have a copy of that in your packet. You can see the CARE program and the OSS.
Six-day enrollment report.
Okay, initially when we posted this, we had some numbers inverted. Those were caught and readjusted. So basically, the first round that we received on Friday had the seniors as the freshmen, the sophomores as, okay, it was just all backwards. But it's right now, so these are the numbers for 12th grade, you have 354 students, 11th grade, 310, 10th grade, 394, and 9th grade, 342, totaling 1,400 students as per our 6th. So as you can see, we're still projecting increases in enrollment based on what we're seeing in the elementary schools. So next year, we should see around 1,436 students, and the following year will be up to 1,500. So that is the bubble we've embraced.
I was looking at the grade schools on these reports. I really did appreciate it, because this is our future planning right here, these grade school kids. And sure, there are bumps and drops and bumps. But if you look at all the grade schools, it evens out over a long period of time. We have some years here, 8th grade at Beverly Manor is 99, the biggest it will be for the kindergarten. And 51 pretty much evens out, even though it goes up and down. And 52, we have high 6th, 7th, and 8th, but then it drops to a normal pattern again. So for our long, and I look at St. Pat's, and it stays pretty smooth all the way through. And I'm not sure how many we actually get from St. Pat's, since they have options of appropriate high schools to attend. But for long-range planning, and what we see now, other than some builder coming in and deciding to put up a big new subdivision that is unexpected, it looks like we can plan for the future with some fairly good security of our facility needs, other than maybe new programs that would pop up that would alter, or fluctuations in enrollment in various courses or classrooms.
That's true. We're pretty blessed in that respect. That's nice. It's nice to be a high school district for that reason, because you can see what the elementary districts are doing. We don't have to interpolate based on birth rates and what's going on in the county.
Although I did see something that I noted when I went to the police celebration at the park that evening this summer. I've never seen so many babies and strollers and toddlers in my life. I thought, uh-oh, how do we count these?
Well, if you look at birth rates, they tend to go along with financial booms and busts. So as the economy has increased, we've seen an increase in the number of births. If it decreases, you see a decrease in that. And I think there's some of that that's playing out within this bubble here. But I will tell you, one of the interesting things to me was my first year coming in, I saw 3 years of 1,500, and last year we projected only 2 years of 1,500. Well, we're back at 3. So that's just kind of the way things go. You'll see it fluctuate.
With the new old band area now,
Yeah.
added space, and our new music building, hopefully we have breathing room.
We should be fine. We've done that mental exercise a few times. And bear in mind, just because a classroom is used right now doesn't mean that it's used the entire day. So even a standard prep for a teacher is 5 hours out of the 7. That means 2 hours that classroom is available. So with some reworking of scheduling, you can utilize that space for a short period of time. You don't want to do that long term, but to get through a bubble, you need to do that.
This is kind of a nice relief for us and the facility in the future.
And I don't think there's any huge surprises on there,
No.
which is good. I mean, I think it's good to have that long-range planning, but so far it's staying what we expected.
I know I made at least one person nervous when the sophomores and the juniors were in the grade. They said, "Did we really lose about 90 students?" No, that's what gave away that the numbers were upside down. So we were able to make that correction.
So,
Still 1,400 kids.
so pretty much, I mean, when you gave us that report last year about staffing levels, I mean, our staffing levels now are really, I mean, our student population now is going to be this way for the next 12 years or on a bubble. So, I mean, right now, we're not actually on a bubble at all. We're at a norm. So if we feel like we're stretched in certain departments, staffing-wise, that would be something we want to normalize now, right? Because 12 years, I mean,
Yes, and I think you got to be a little bit cautious in walking into that because you do not want to put yourself in a position where you overestimate your staff needs and you get to the backside of the bubble and then you have to release staff. And so that's what we've been very cautious about as we move forward.
I mean, I hear you there, but I just hate to think that, I mean, at the same time, if you're not fully staffed right now for the next 12 years, you're going to be stressing those areas because it's going to be the same or different, right? Is my only point. I mean,
Well, I still see a pretty big fluctuation here for 12 years because I think we go from a max of 1507 down to
Oh, yeah.
1343. So,
but I mean, right now, this school year, you're at 1,400. You're going to be at 1,400 for the next 9 years. 1,400 or higher for the next 9 years, and then you just drop 32 students, 30 to 50 students. That's all I'm saying. I mean,
Now, we're pretty good where we are now.
and we're okay for now. I mean, we're a little tight in spots, and I think that's part of what we've been doing. Because the other thing that you have to bear in mind is remember these are projections. If something happens in the state of Illinois, things change drastically, you could find yourself in a position where these numbers have dropped.
or Peoria stuff.
And so I think we're trying, that's why we're cautiously walking into this, just trying to maintain a sense of what we're seeing as we move forward. You know, we do have more hires to do this year.
Right.
So you'll hear that coming later as we get a little closer to our numbers. The back half of the year during hiring season, I'll bring out that staff overview again and that staffing plan so that people can see what the plan is as we move forward. So
Yes. And that's, I make my comment to remind us for when you bring that forward.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Segue.
Yes.
All right, anything else? Okay, so now we just have an enrollment report. Not just enrollment, just auto enrollment
Just
report, I
general
guess.
enrollment. This is what we have as of
Round one.
the 3rd.
We added a student since,
We're at 1401. So, and I think you'll see that fluctuate. That's pretty normal. So next month we could be at 1405, and the month after that we could be at 1402, which is a little back and forth.
all right, boards committee reports. Do you want to?
I could do that for the facilities.
I have my notes right here.
All right.
I am
Let's hear
ready,
about
thank you, thank you. Brian Faulkner came in to talk to us about the demolition in the old band rooms. And that is going on very well, and the demo should be done by the end of September. And hopefully the remodeling will be done by the end of December. So it's coming along. The roof inspection is going to be done soon, so I'm sure it was done by now. And there's been lighting. The lighting was placed under the bleachers. And there was a film platform put up on our opposite bleachers, which it was in disguise. I didn't even find it, so there you go. And then the transformer and the switch gears are gone on the front. So there's going to be paneling and paint to kind of camouflage that area. So there you go. And we will have our open house the morning of September 28th. And we're going to hopefully a lot of people want to see it.
All right, Brian, I believe you might be the only person here from finance committee.
Well, we pretty much talked about what Joe talked about. There was a little bit of mention about funding with health, life, safety that will be, for that as needed, funds, and then from the 300,000 transportation fee fund transfer. And then we also talked about future staffing just kind of did that. And that covers finance.
Anybody else think curriculum met, Gloria?
Thank you for the notes.
Yes.
Well done.
She's over taking.
Curriculum.
Lisa, I believe she's addressing that.
Oh, sorry, yes.
And she's taking more notes, right?
She's taking more notes.
Right,
I'm keeping them because everything is there that I need, so.
Great, thank you.
So that's good.
And I would just add to that, that we did have kind of an extensive talk during that meeting about planning out. So we talked about planning out more kind of scheduled curriculum meetings. And then one of the things that was discussed in some detail was using data more than we do now, more so. It was hard to explain how we would use data, like how the idea. So I came up with an example from the Triple I conference that I thought was useful. So there's Maine Township has a school district in that's part of Rosemont, and they have a big influx of Hispanic students. So what they've noticed is that they don't have as many students going into their honors courses, and then that feeds all the way to AP and so on and so on. But it also lowers their scores, because if you're in the honors courses, your scores are better. And so they recognize that as a problem just for their school district, but also for those students. And then they identified that problem. And so when I was talking in curriculum about telling stories, that's kind of the beginning of the story. And then recognizing that problem, they then went and looked at the students, the Hispanic students who were not moving in, and did a scatter graph that plotted some points and identified students who were getting good grades where they were, and they had good test scores on maps or whatever they were using, and found that all the kids that were in the upper right quadrant there, and then moved those kids into honors courses, but provided more support. Because the problem they found was that the kids didn't have the home support to motivate those kids in there and then support them while they're there. And then they created a kind of team to address those issues. So I just thought I would share that story here because I think it was not totally clear. I don't think I was fully able to express what I wanted with data for a curriculum kind of meeting, but that's the kind of thing that I'm looking at where I wouldn't, as a board member, look and say, this is where I think we need to work, but the administration would look and say, here's an issue that tells a story, but we don't know the story, and investigate it and use data in that way to chart a solution to it and then maintain kind of changes. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Anything, I don't think anyone else insurance. All right. Okay. Discussion and informational items. The Cantor Pride Award.
Yes, so each year we determine, and we do it in an administrative meeting, we kind of get some feedback from people, who we are going to place as the Panther Pride, and we show Mr. Schroen as our Panther Pride recipient. He is a long time statistician for softball. He's on the score table in basketball, boys and girls. He's super active, and he's been around for a while doing all of this. So he's kind of a staple of our programs, and we thought it was right for him to place in the position.
I think that's a great. Well done.
All right. Any more comments on that? Okay. 7.2, the textbook list.
It's purely informational. We're required to present to the board all the textbooks that we're using here at WCHS, so there's a full list.
I had a question. I know a lot of the courses are using 100% Chromebooks, and I know you talked about they don't last forever. So how are you planning to recycle, or that's probably the wrong word, are you going to go by classroom, by usage? How are you going to?
We go by age.
Okay.
And we do have a tech replacement cycle.
Okay.
I think we normally discuss that in the tech committee, and then it goes up to the finance committee.
I was curious about I like the fact that this was in here. I didn't quite understand how it was being utilized. It talked about the number of textbooks and then the computer usage. Some were 100%, and they still had textbooks, which I don't object to. I really I look at grade schools and textbooks are becoming obsolete. And I still think there is structure in textbooks. You don't have to use every page, but there is structure there. And from grade level to grade level, two of them. So I was glad to see we still are. I think they do have a place in education. But, so it just varies. We have the textbooks that just seems to vary about who teaches a class, how comfortable they are with their teaching style, and what they utilize in that teaching style.
Yeah. I would agree. And what we've been able to do, and I think this was something you were asking, is as we replace fewer textbooks, believe it or not, that cost shifts evenly over to the Chromebook replacements.
Textbooks are very expensive.
Yes, they're not cheap.
I like that, though. It's just nice to see
Yep.
that report.
Still a fair amount of books.
Oh, yeah. We do. We have a nice
So with the
balance.
Chromebooks, there,
Mhm.
yeah. All right. 7.3, the Illinois Joint Annual Conference, November 22nd through 24th.
There you go. We've received, I think by now we should have just about everybody's plans. I think Debbie's been working with each of them to talk about what you need. And we should be ready to go.
Where y'all stay?
She talked to us.
Well, when we sent out the email
Oh.
asking who was going, she's the one who does all
No,
that.
I understand. what you're
I'd
saying.
move all that over to her.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that, so I couldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe at the meeting somebody.
Yeah, I think so, the meeting was, okay.
So I'll make sure we get packets out here shortly so you know where you are and what's going on. I'm pretty sure, don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure last time we talked to everybody was initially on the beach, which tends to be the one who's so.
7.4, Allen Transportation Service Contract for 2021 and 22.
This is just an informational item. Roger Allen would like to bump up our contract. I think we approved it in December last year. And so he's actually going to bring it to the superintendent's meeting the next time that they meet. He contacted me, and so I wanted to get this out there. I understand why he wants to do it. If he gets all the districts locked in around December to extend the contract, it reduces his leverage as far as the timeliness on leasing or purchasing additional buses. If he knows that earlier, then he has more time to get out bids and try to reduce his costs for the replacement or the addition of additional vehicles. And so it's better to do that early instead of trying to get bids out in March, April, because then you're almost behind the curve. Because all that's already been done for that year. And then there's no one that's going to be able to give you a decent price on transportation after like April timeframe. And so he's going to talk to the superintendents and then they'll bring it back. Of course, we're not going to be able to do anything now, but we may see an action item in October, which would be 2 months earlier, but then the next year, possibly as early as July, locking that in for the next. I like July 1 contracts because then it mirrors our fiscal years.
How come he's not raising the rate? Doesn't he usually raise it? I'm just
He
curious.
does, I don't know if I brought my folder.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
No.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Roger has done some things like that, and I mean, the year right after the tornado when we
Yeah,
locked
he
in,
held it steady for several.
He kept
Yeah.
it, he said, I'm not gonna do that to all you guys, all the districts, and so, and for 18-19, he had to correct it and had a 4% raise. I think that's the kind of operation Roger runs, and we have great service because it is a lot. All of our out-of-district transportation he handles, and why I wouldn't want to take that on in-house. And so I know we truly value what he has done. I don't know, maybe Kyle can ask.
So there's no particular reason?
No.
I try not to forget or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Are you sure you want to do that? Throw him a %.
I'm sure it'll go up again, but
Yeah,
I'm
Roger's
sure it's
going to
gonna
listen to this
It's right there.
webcast. And
All right, do you have any others?
I've been reading in the newspaper Springfield reports, and also some of our reports that come to us through our email from Springfield and so forth, about what's going on in education down there. There's a big push again for school consolidation in the Springfield level, because this is seen as the gift of really cutting big costs across education. Those who aren't in education see this is very easy to do. Just one superintendent, a lot more kids, and also county consolidation, township, so forth, in those areas. Do our representatives give us any indication of how strong this push is for laws going that way?
Not at this point. We hear about it through the associations from time to time. Our next IASA meeting is coming up shortly, and we'll hear from the legislative committee again, who's got a pretty tight ear to the wall with what's happening in Springfield. I think that consolidation pushes from time to time, but I think what people fail to see with it is what happens when you consolidate, and it's a matter of numbers. And by that I mean you're not going to go to the least common denominator, you're going to the greatest. Meaning your base salary is going to go up to whatever the highest is. And so even with losing, say, a superintendent, that cost gets gobbled up very quickly when you're talking about 200 to 300 employees who have now increased their salaries. It's an exponential gain. And also what ends up happening is, well, okay, so you've also increased the number of students. Did you actually lose a superintendent, or did you gain an assistant superintendent? So that decreases the amount that you're even gaining there.
We're talking about really looking at it, your research, extensive research,
Yeah.
the actual outcome, not just on the paper, which we don't understand one and base it.
Well, research time and time again has shown that the reality of consolidation is much uglier than the thought of
That's
consolidation.
really, that's what,
Yeah,
if
I
they
mean,
think it's going to save money.
yeah, but I mean, it's not bad for them to look at it as long as the research is done appropriately and
They know.
financials. In some areas, maybe where you have districts with a lot of declining enrollment, and you're talking about consolidation. We've seen that happen in rural counties in Illinois. Yes, there is a cost savings associated with that because you're also losing total of staff. But when you're in an area that's holding stable or actually increasing, it's not usually a real functioning approach.
I think we have an excellent example here of the two ways to do it with Peoria, having one superintendent and one school board. And here we are with what we have, but we also look at others.
So, I feel like having children that are going through this system, I feel like they're receiving a good elementary education, and I'm very proud of what we do at the high school. I think we provide an excellent product here for our students, and I think in the long run, we prepared them for their needs as they move into the future.
I just didn't know how many votes they had and legislators really interested in pushing.
I think that is, well, it remains to be seen. I don't know that I have a great answer for that.
We'll wait and watch.
All right, so the consent agenda,
Yes.
Okay, so the consent agenda, 8.1 minutes, 8.11 WCHS Finance Committee meeting minutes from August 16th, 16th, 2019. 8.12 WCHS regular board meeting minutes, August 19th, 2019. 8.1.3 WCHS curriculum meeting minutes, August 20th, 2019. And 8.14 WCHS facility committee meeting minutes, September 4th, 2019. 8.2 bills, 8.3 reimbursement for personal growth, 8.4 PCAC meeting dates, 2019, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Questions? Roll call.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Hessen.
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
9.1 personnel, 9.1.1 leave of absence. Give a motion to approve of leave of absence for L. Metz. That's English teacher and dance coach.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any comments? Roll call, please.
Hessen.
Yes?
Knopfinger.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion passes. 9.1.2, let's see, employment of certified personnel. 9.1.2A, approve employment of Nancy Flynn for long-term sub for English. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Nancy was a longtime teacher here, just recently retired. And so she'll be filling in for Mrs. Mills while she's out.
Roll call, please.
Fisher.
Yes.
Wait, can I have a motion?
Did we? I think so. Did we get a motion?
Yes, I second.
Yeah, I did.
Brad-
I did.
Brad-
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Hessen.
Yes. All right, 9.13, employment of non-certified personnel. 9.13A, approve employment of Roberta Farrow, a part-time cafeteria worker.
So moved.
Should I do both? Okay, I'm going to do both.
Okay.
9.1.3, approve employment of Melody Bolger as part-time cafeteria worker.
Now I will
You
make
still
a
good with
motion
that?
for the
Okay.
two of them.
Okay.
Second.
Right, give a motion and second. Comments? All right, roll call, please.
Fisher.
Yes.
Hessen.
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
All right, 9.14, employment of extracurricular personnel. 9.14A, approve employment of Jill Wood, advocate for awareness sponsor. 9.1.4B, approve employment of Matt Brayman, assistant girls basketball court coach. And 9.1.4C, approve employment of Brittany Underwood for dance.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, real quick, Jill Wood is taking the leadership of a new club. This just officially hires her as the sponsor. She's actually been running as a pilot for the last couple of years. And earlier this year, we approved it as an actual club. So now we're getting a sponsor, and that's what this happens. Matt Brayman is taking over as an assistant basketball coach. He's been a longtime volunteer at the high school level for the boys side, and now he's moving over to the girls side. We know he'll do a great job over there. And then Brittany Underwood is covering for Mrs. Metz while she is out as the dance coach.
And the residents.
Yes, very good resume. Has been part of that program for a while. So,
All right. Yes, roll call, please.
Butler.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Hessen.
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
McNabb.
Yes.
All right, 9.2, adoption of the FY 2020 budget. Do I have a motion? Do we need to, anything special?
no, just a
All right,
motion.
there's a motion.
Move.
Second.
Okay, motion second. I don't think we need to discuss that anymore.
The only thing is after you vote, make sure you sign on the correct side of your vote, okay?
Okay, yes.
And there's 5 copies of that to go over.
All right. All right, so we do second. Roll call.
Mayor
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Hessen,
Yes.
Knopfinger.
Yes.
All right. So we get budget. All right, 9.3, approved job description of cafeteria worker and food service worker. We have a motion to approve job description for the food service worker.
Move.
I'll second.
I'm going to kill 4 birds with 1 stone. So the job description, no, you do need to do them separate, but the job description for the food service worker and the job description for the food sanitation worker, and the job description for the school psychologist and job description for school social worker are all updates of current positions. We just needed to update the job descriptions to reflect the duties that they currently do. As far as the psychologist and the social worker, those are township positions and previously didn't have fully fleshed out job descriptions, so now we do. So that's why those exist.
We're not replacing anybody, or we're
No.
not hiring somebody.
This is just job description. This is honestly just technical updates.
Guess we're buying new. Okay, we had a motion and second for. So once we have a roll call for the food service worker?
Knopfinger,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Hessen.
Yes. Okay, then 9.4, approved job description cafeteria, food service sanitation worker. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Okay, so, all right, we'll finish this roll call. Okay, so roll call for, or, okay, so all in favor, say
Vote.
aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. All right, motion passed. 9.5, approved job description for the school psychiatrist.
Psychologist.
Yes, sorry, school psychologist, right? Okay,
So
do I have a
moved.
motion?
Second.
Go ahead.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Approved job description, school social worker, motion. All in,
Second.
motion is second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Now we have approved firework display at homecoming football game and bonfire at community day.
Okay, so each year we do this. If you- yeah.
I'll do a motion. I'll do a motion to approve firework display at homecoming football game and bonfire at community day.
So moved.
All right, I'll second. All right, now,
Okay, so the bonfire is a long staple at community night. We leave 5 points after community night and go out hold the bonfire. So it's always nice when you're making a giant fire that you have board approval to do that. As far as the fireworks, we also have that approved, as long as we can find somebody licensed who can set them off. And I think some years we have and some years we haven't. So I'm not sure where we're at with that, but we will figure it out before we do that.
we'll approve it as long as we have a licensed firework. Not Joe out there.
No.
Even though I know some guys with matches.
Right.
That's what we're afraid of.
Yeah, that's what you worry about. Yeah.
All right. So that's our explanation. We have roll call, please.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Hessen.
Yes. All right, and 9.8, approve second reading of Press Plus issue 99, 100, and 101 district policies. Motion to not read that?
Yes, you do need to waive the second
Okay,
reading.
so should I start with
Make a
waive?
motion to waive second reading.
I'll second that. All right, so roll call on waiving the second.
Fisher,
Yes.
Hessen,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Okay. And now do I have a motion to approve the second reading of the Press Plus issue 99, 100, and 101 district policies.
So moved.
Second. All right, roll call.
Butler,
Yes.
Wooten,
Yes.
Knopfinger,
Yes.
Essing,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
And I just need a motion to go into executive session for purposes of discussing student disciplinary cases.
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call. Wooten,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
No action. Other than adjournment.
For boards and
So,
Well, Miss Ann, great to see you. How'd you like the, you weren't here for the thing, right?